So we've got another 3 hours left to get through these, so we'll be fine. Thank you for the amazing, amazing answers. Here's a question which I think is relevant. It's come from the audience. Kind of surprising, but I think it's relevant as well. It says, I have been hearing and reading about the change in human evolution and consciousness that is about to take place for many years, meaning he's been hearing it for many years. Out in the real world, I see no evidence of this. The way people are and the way the world is can make me feel despondent and hopeless. When are we going to see a real positive change amongst everyday people?
I took the last one first. Would you like to take this one first?
I actually disagree with that. I actually have the opportunity to travel around the world, and I'm working with more of a select group of people, but I have witnessed such a shift in consciousness in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, when I was invited, imagine 1999, when I was invited to do talks in the United States or different parts of the world, that people would just be like, I'm going to go get my crystal out, or, okay, just something, they were putting their power in something else. And now people are so informed, and people are so willing. When you look in an airport or when you look in a city and you see people busy doing their thing, they're just running a program. I assert that if we're not in the present moment, that 95% of the time we're running a program. So don't take any of that personally. That's just a program that we have that we just run. But when you get right down to it and you have an opportunity to interact with people, their values have shifted dramatically. There's not such a need for materialism that there was even 10 years ago. People want meaning. They want to understand things better. They want connection. They want to be able to monitor their creations. They want to have the mystical experience. They find a value now in nature. Now, there's a whole intellectual division that's going on where people are still clinging to the old paradigms. And, for years, I used to think that I had to speak to both of those groups. And all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, I just no longer am interested in that other group. I'm just not interested in that. I'm interested in the people that want to hear it. And I think if there's enough of momentum or movement in that direction, more and more people will continue to change their ways. But for me, I've been very observant in watching people. And I can look out in this audience and I can tell you that this is a great representation of awareness right here. And this is a great representation of people wanting to know and people who are informed. But the question that I have for every single one of you is on Sunday or on Monday when you leave here, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to apply these principles to your life? And so if you're not demonstrating that in your own life, then you're observing everything and everybody else that you still are. But if you have the opportunity every single day to be a work in progress, to retreat from your life just a small amount of time, and sit down before you start your day and decide who you're going to present to the world that day. And if you can combine the concepts of quantum physics and neuroplasticity and psychoneuroimmunology and epigenetics and all these different idealisms into one model, and you are the expression of that, and you're able to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, you better get ready, because something unusual is going to happen in your life. It's the law. And so then if you're willing to take your attention off of everybody else for a period of time, and the brain's job is to create meaning between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. And if you have the ability to move back and forth between those two states with a certain amount of elegance and not give your power to anyone or anything, and you're able to sustain that, you will begin to attract conditions in your life equal to who you're being in that moment. So I say that it is happening. I say that it is happening individual per individual. And I would say that as people begin to wake up and they begin to demonstrate those changes, you will begin to see small pockets of consciousness beginning to show up in different parts of the world, where people are really beginning to, as Gregg said, no longer invest their energy into old paradigms. A new paradigm has been created, and they just leave that old paradigm behind. Well, I have witnessed it enough times just in seeing people heal themselves. I have witnessed it in being invited to companies and organizations all over the world. And 10 years ago, I would sit down and go through all this neuroscience. I walk in and they raise their hand and they say, when are we going to meditate? This is Sony Entertainment in New York City. They're closing $50 million deals with Beyonce, and they're no BS people, but they want to know how to make themselves more balanced and more whole. So the conversation is shifting. And, you know, after 2012, everybody said, oh, the end of the world, beginning of a new consciousness. How come it isn't here? Well, it is here. When you went to your Holy Communion or your Bar Mitzvah, the moment your rite of passage, if you're a native, after that rite of passage, the next day you didn't grow up and you were an adult. It took time. It took time for you to grow up, and this is the process of growing up. We're in this acceleration. We're in this process. And the energy, by the way, is heightened for a very specific reason, to make us so uncomfortable that we have to do something. We have to act. We have to move in some way. But the movement that we have to make has to be more fraternal, more brotherly, more sisterly. There's got to be a connection that we have to demonstrate. And I think if we demonstrate that, I think people start resonating with it, and it happens. But it is happening, absolutely happening in my world.
Yes. I agree.